Snow fell silently on the gated mountain resort, soft enough to feel harmless. From a distance, everything looked calm, controlled, and untouched. But beneath that quiet surface was a decision no one was supposed to notice. An HOA had quietly removed a critical safety system, labeling it an unnecessary expense and trusting that disaster would never dare touch a luxury community. One resident noticed what was missing and tried to warn them. Instead of listening, the HOA turned on him with fines, restrictions, and pressure meant to silence concern. Then, one night, the mountain answered back. And when the alarms never sounded, everyone realized too late what had been taken away. When power ignores safety, the question becomes unavoidable: who really pays the price? High above the old alpine town, the gated resort of Val d'Oriol sat carved into the mountainside like a monument to certainty. Glassfront chalets reflected endless snowfields, their warm lights glowing against the cold darkness. From the outside, it looked flawless. Exclusive. Safe. The kind of place people believed existed beyond ordinary problems. For Mateo Alvarez, life there began quietly. He was not drawn to luxury for its own sake. He worked as a structural safety inspector, someone trained to notice stress points, failures, and risks that others preferred to overlook. When he and his wife moved into one of the older chalets built long before Val d'Oriol became a luxury brand, he felt pride more than excitement. The move represented stability, a controlled environment, and the promise of peace after years of demanding work. At first, the community delivered exactly what it advertised. Roads were cleared before dawn. Gates opened smoothly. The HOA newsletters emphasized harmony, standards, and prestige. Every detail felt managed. Every surface polished. Everything suggested that nothing had been left to chance. But Mateo noticed what was not being discussed. Cosmetic upgrades moved quickly through approval channels, while structural maintenance was quietly delayed. Emergency preparedness announcements became shorter each year, eventually replaced by lifestyle updates and branding language. Faded safety signage disappeared and was never replaced. Small omissions, each easy to dismiss on its own, began forming a pattern Mateo could not ignore. The mountain itself demanded attention. Snowfall in Val d'Oriol was heavier than brochures implied. Layers built along steep ridges above the resort, compressing under their own weight. Mateo searched for familiar markers: monitoring equipment, warning infrastructure, signs that the mountain was being actively observed. They were missing. When he asked casually, neighbors brushed it off. The HOA had everything under control. Val d'Oriol was exclusive for a reason. Safety was assumed to be included in the price. His first HOA meeting shattered that assumption. The language was smooth, confident, and carefully curated. Decisions were framed as efficiencies. Cuts were labeled optimizations. Risk was discussed as an abstract concept, distant and unlikely. When Mateo asked questions, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Responses grew vague. Follow-ups were delayed. Concern was reframed as unnecessary anxiety. Winter deepened. Snowstorms arrived earlier and lingered longer. External advisories grew more frequent, while internal communications stayed reassuringly vague. Mateo began tracking public safety data on his own, comparing it to what the HOA shared. The gap widened week by week. Still, life continued as usual for everyone else. Guests arrived with skis and champagne. Fireplaces glowed. The resort moved forward wrapped in confidence, as if money and structure could hold back nature itself. Mateo felt increasingly alone. What he did not realize yet was that his concern had been noticed. Behind closed doors, his questions were no longer viewed as curiosity, but as disruption. And as the snow piled higher above Val d'Oriol, the HOA was preparing to protect something it valued far more than safety: control. After the avalanche, the resort fell into a strange, deliberate quiet. Snow was cleared efficiently. Damaged areas were hidden behind temporary barriers stained to match surrounding chalets. Gates resumed their rhythm. To outsiders, the crisis appeared contained. To Mateo, it felt erased. The HOA newsletter arrived with polished calm, describing the event as a rare environmental anomaly. Responsibility vanished behind reassurance. The focus shifted from preparedness to property values. The word fault never appeared. Then the pressure began. Official notices appeared in Matteo's mailbox, each framed as routine compliance. Minor violations were suddenly discovered: railings, fixtures, exterior materials. Fines accumulated rapidly, stacking into significant financial strain. Inspections increased. Photographs were taken. Measurements recorded. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Access within the community narrowed. Gate credentials failed intermittently. Shared amenities were restricted. Requests for emergency documentation were denied as confidential. The message was unmistakable. Matteo was now a liability. Psychological pressure followed. Every snowfall heightened awareness. Every delay felt intentional. The mountain loomed heavier each night. Sleep became shallow. Preparedness replaced comfort. Neighbors accepted the narrative easily. Some repeated HOA language. Others avoided the topic entirely. Silence hardened into culture. Matteo documented everything. Notices, fines, delays, discrepancies, timelines. Patterns emerged. What looked like coincidence revealed itself as strategy. Control of perception replaced mitigation of risk. The retaliation intensified. Utilities fluctuated. Heating failed intermittently. Administrative discrepancies appeared without explanation. The pressure became punitive. Then an unmarked envelope arrived. Inside was evidence that confirmed everything Matteo suspected. Internal recordings. Financial records. Maintenance delays. Clear acknowledgement that safety systems were removed to cut costs and preserve image. Clear intent to avoid responsibility. The realization was heavy. Possessing the truth made retreat impossible. When Matteo attempted to submit the evidence, the HOA struck first. Accusations of misconduct appeared. Administrative threats escalated. Pressure extended to his wife. Isolation tightened. Winter pressed on. Snowfall intensified. Advisories grew urgent. Inside the gates, reassurance remained the official tone. Matteo understood then that the conflict was no longer personal. It was structural. It was about whether authority could rewrite reality by outlasting resistance. The hearing that followed was meant to be procedural. Instead, it became exposure. Evidence dismantled every layer of curated language. Financial redirection. Maintenance postponements. A continuous chain of decisions prioritizing appearance over preparedness. The avalanche ceased to be the story. The choices leading to it took center stage. The narrative collapsed. Media attention followed. Investigations expanded. Insurance froze coverage. Authority fractured. The HOA's retaliation was re-examined in context and revealed as suppression. Governance became control. Silence became policy. Leadership positions dissolved under scrutiny. External administrators took control. The system that enforced compliance lost its power. The mountain had already spoken once. Now the world was listening. The collapse of Val d'Oriol's HOA unfolded in waves. Insurance downgrades. Legal exposure. Special assessments. Property values fell. Confidence evaporated. Safety systems were reinstalled under oversight, louder and impossible to ignore. Accountability reached individuals. For Matteo, relief came without triumph. Fines were voided. Threats withdrawn. But clarity replaced comfort. Staying no longer made sense. They left. The loss was accepted as closure. Beyond the resort, the impact spread. Regulations tightened. Oversight increased. gated communities reconsidered assumptions. Val d'Oriol became a reference point not for luxury, but for failure. The most unsettling truth was how ordinary the story was. No villain. No conspiracy. Just calculation, confidence, and silence. Power had operated politely. It failed because one person refused to accept reassurance instead of evidence. The mountain remained unchanged. It had never cared about image. The question left behind was not whether the disaster was preventable. It was far more uncomfortable than that. How many communities are standing quietly right now, confident in their gates, rules, and reputations while ignoring the warning signs they have decided are too inconvenient to hear? Mateo Alvarez and Sofia Alvarez walked away from Val d'Oriol, leaving the gates and luxury chalets behind. Snow fell softly around them. Their expressions were sullen yet resolute, the weight of months of struggle clear in every step. Behind them, the community that once represented safety and exclusivity now stood as a reminder of choices made, consequences ignored, and truths exposed. This departure symbolized closure, responsibility recognized, and a lesson learned too late by many. The mountains remained, indifferent to human drama. The resort's gates, chalets, and landscaped perfection contrasted sharply with nature's relentless presence. Mateo and Sofia were small in the distance, a reminder of the scale of consequence, of human vulnerability, and of accountability finally realized. Val d'Oriol's story would be told widely, its lessons rippling far beyond its snow-covered slopes. The ultimate question lingered: how many communities still stood, confident in appearance, while quietly ignoring the warning signs that reality had already whispered?